3 days after the rugged maniac and I'm still sore all over. But we're not going to talk about that today. Today, we're going to talk about Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. Welcome to day 2 of my week of reviews. So back in ancient times, there was this guy named Rick Riordan whose son got diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia. And he, the son that is, was studying Greek mythology in the 2nd grade, and he really liked it, so he asked his father to tell him stories about the Greek gods. And so his dad started telling him stories about stuff from the Greek mythology, from stuff that he could remember, and eventually Percy Jackson and the Olympians was born. I think that's a pretty cool conception of a book, so I thought I'd start with that first. So there are 5 books in this series, and there's a follow-up series which I have not read yet, but I will eventually. The first book was originally published in 2005 and it is called The Lightning Thief. The sequel, The Sea of Monsters, came out in 2006. The third book in the series is called The Titan's Curse, came out in 2007. The fourth book of the series is called The Battle of the Labyrinth and it came out in 2008. And the last book of the series is called The Last Olympian and it came out in 2009. I have only just recently read them. I read all 5 of them during the Boteva in July, and I really enjoyed this series. It is on the younger side. It is meant for teens, like young teens maybe. At the first book, the main character, Percy Jackson, is 12, and at the last one, he just about turns 16. So basically, it is the story of Percy Jackson, who at the first book, like I said, is 12 years old, and he finds out that he is a demigod, which means that his father was a god and, well, his mother is human. And his father is not just any god, but one of the big 3 gods. And if you're not familiar with Greek mythology, basically all the gods are interrelated of some sort, but the big 3 gods are these 3 brothers called Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Zeus is kind of the god of the skies, Poseidon is the god of the seas, and Hades is the god of the underworld. So our boy Percy has a high affinity for water. He can make water do whatever he wants, pretty much. He can breathe underwater, and if he wants to get soaked, he actually has to will the water to soak it, because otherwise he would stay as dry as if he was outside of the water. So basically in the first book he finds out who he is, and he finds new friends, and he finds adventure, and it is a really cool adventurous book, which I really like. Also, another thing that I've just now remembered that I like about this series is usually book series or any kind of series that are about people, teenagers or whatever, everything happens during the school year. But these books are actually all of the action happens during the summer, during their summer break. So I think that's actually pretty cool. I mean, it's just a little different than the norm, I guess. Thought I'd mention it. Anyway, so without spoiling too much, so far I don't think I've actually said any spoilers. Yeah, that's what happens in the first book, and I'm not gonna tell you how it ends because, well, I just don't want to spoil it. This should be a spoiler-free video, but if I do end up giving away any spoilers, don't worry, I'll let you know. So Percy starts getting attacked by mythical creatures all over the place, and that is when his mother reveals that he is actually a half-god, and she sends him off, or he ends up going to Camp Half-Blood, which is this place where all the demigod kids go to and they learn how to fight and how to protect themselves. And there are some who stay there a year long, and there are others who only stay there during the summer and go to like normal human schools during the school year. And also there are 12 different cabins, one for each god except for Hades, who doesn't get a cabin. So all the half-bloods are pretty much called heroes because I don't really know why, but that's what they're called. They're heroes. So sometimes heroes get to go on a journey, but before they go, they have to go to the oracle and get a prophecy. And in each book there's a prophecy that's happening, and it's not necessarily directly related to Percy. It always involves other people, and it doesn't really say things as they are straight on. Rather, you think it's one thing, but it turns out that it's a different thing. They're kind of interpretative, I guess, in a way. And pretty much all the prophecies turn out to be true one way or another. So in The Lightning Thief, it is Percy who gets the prophecy, and he gets to go on a journey with his newfound friend Annabeth and his friend Grover. The second book, Sea of Monsters, continues following Percy in his adventures. This time the prophecy is not given to him. It is rather given to Clarice, who is from the heiress cabin, and they go on yet another adventure over to the Bermuda Triangle, which is where the Sea of Monsters lies, and they have to save the camp because bad stuff has been happening, and I'm not gonna tell you more about it because if you haven't read the first one and if you haven't read the second one, I just don't want to spoil it. In the third book, The Titan's Curse, there's yet another prophecy, and we meet even more of the Greek gods and more of the mythical creatures. Yeah, I can't really tell you anything about this without spoiling it. But again, it's a whole lot of adventure happening. So basically throughout the next books, bad stuff, more and more bad stuff keeps happening, and we keep finding out more and more about this world of demigods and heroes, which is actually the same thing, and the gods and all the mythological creatures. Eventually, spoiler alert, there's a full-blown war in the last book. And there's also a great prophecy in this one that we actually find out about, or what it is exactly, in the Battle of the Labyrinth, but this is the book when things come to pass. One thing that I found just like it had small little annoyance was the time between these two books. I mean, this book is basically like a year after this book. And I don't mean publication, I mean in the actual book. Stuff happens in this book a year after the ending of this book. And we don't know what's been happening during this year, except that everyone has been training a lot. And that's pretty much all they say about it. Everyone has been getting ready for the big bad war. I mean, I get why it was skipped that way, but at the same time, for a second there it was like, that's annoying. But then you move on, because there's a whole lot of action in this book and it is pretty great. So yeah, that's pretty much Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It is not meant to be a romance story, which is kind of refreshing. There's a lot of adventuring in these books and a lot of action, which are both things that I like very much. So I really enjoyed them. I believe I gave them 5 stars each on Goodreads, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading the Heroes of Olympus, which is the sequel series to this one. And for the movie part, the first movie, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, came out in 2010. I just saw it a couple months ago and actually really enjoyed it. To be honest, it was probably the thing that made me go over the line of being just a little curious about the series to actually really wanting to read it. So that's pretty good. And although that movies cannot really equal their book counterparts, but it was really enjoyable, and they did make a lot of changes in the first movie, and from the trailer of the second movie that I saw for the very first time yesterday, I think that they have made a lot of changes in that one as well. But when you start making changes in the first one, you kind of gotta follow through with that line of story, so I can see how that would happen. However, I will reserve judgment until after I see the movie, which happens in just 5 hours. In 5 hours, I'm going to see Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters, which is what I will be reviewing tomorrow for you. So tune in tomorrow to hear how the movie was. Bye!